everybody. My name is Joan Mulvihill. I am the Digitalisation and Sustainability Lead at Siemens in Ireland, and I am the moderator, host for this afternoon's webinar with the epic title, Responsible Use of Artificial Intelligence for Person Empowerment on Health and Wellbeing. Now that is a big title. And there's a lot to cover, and we have some absolutely outstanding speakers who are going to take us through all of that. We have everything from patient empowerment in terms of platforms and applications, alliances, but also what is the policy underlying all of that, the regulatory requirements, and the kind of bigger challenges that we all have to face as society as we move towards a more digital health world. We have a real live digital example to take you through, which will be really exciting. And I mean, assuming everyone stays alive and well for all of this, it'll be really exciting in a very positive way. I'm looking at you, Paolo, down in the corner of my screen. So, you know, this is going to be a really good session. Everyone is going to do their presentations first. We're going to do Q&A at the end. So if you have any questions, I would invite you to pop those into the chat, and I will go through those with our panel at the end. At 4 o'clock until 4:30. So that is our running order. So as you can see, we're to start with Trudy. Now, I think Trudy is having some technical problems at the very start. So what we had intended to start with Trudy from the Arrhythmia Alliance, and then move to Dr. Charles Larkin, the University of Bath, Una Kearns from My Patient Space, Paolo Bruno from Italtel, who's dialing in all the way from Sicily. He's in Palermo at the moment, although I hear it's a lovely sunny day in Bath as well. And then we will finally hear from Dr. Marco Alfano from the IVI himself, and giving us an update on what is going on at the Digital Health Cluster. So I am not going to waffle on for any longer. I have given a fair amount of time now for Trudy to get on board. I don't think she's been able to log in just yet. So Charles, if you don't mind being a total hero and going first at the last minute, I am going to hand over to you. Dr. Charles Larkin, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. So I guess I should start by placing myself in a bit of a context. So I'm trained as an economist, but spent over a decade working with Irish policymakers in the spaces of the bailout, and then banking reform, and then latterly healthcare reform in the Houses of the Oireachtas. And from that experience, I went on to become Director of Research at the Institute for Policy Research, a public policy institute at the University of Bath. So with that background, I'm here to talk about really that complex issue of how do you deal with the regulatory space for AI? And this is really something which you have to think about, because the technology is running so far ahead of where the regulators are at present. And at the core of it is the idea that we have to think about fairness, we have to think about security, and we have to think about accountability and transparency. And for the most part, when we look at AI and machine learning in the healthcare context, it's co-computing. It's not allowing these algorithms to make decisions on their own. It's as a support to a medical professional, and enable that medical professional to provide a higher quality of care, better patient outcomes, and better value for money. And of course, most of you would know from the Irish experience that value for money is very much at the top of people's minds in healthcare, because of the costs and because of the issue of capacity in the Irish health system. So part of the question is, how do you create more capacity? Well, the first thing, though, before you talk about anything about AI and accountability, is leadership. And this is one of the things that's been sorely lacking so far in the conversation. We talk about leadership in AI, but really what we need to talk about is leadership in the wider healthcare space itself. And that has been missing. And that absence has caused operational failures that will impede the introduction of AI in the Irish context. And one of those is the electronic health record. Right now, Ireland is in desperate need of two things. One is an individual health identifier, something which has been discussed for over a decade, and the introduction of electronic healthcare record system. Because if you do not have that data in place, that's the bricks and mortar of how AI and machine learning works is from that data. At the moment, we have lots of data systems. We have new PASS systems. We have systems for GPs, but they all live in splendid isolation to one another. They don't talk well to one another. They have their own data, and they don't really do the analysis that would enable you to unlock the capabilities of AI, and with that, the capabilities that come with the efficiencies garnered from that, from population health, as well as improved management of how hospitals work. I've been working with Martin Curley, the director of the Digital Academy for the HSE, about how to bring about these changes in the Irish Health Service. And with that, researching with the University of Bath with a new program of research, a new £5 million project, the Made Smarter Innovation, People-Led Digitization. And that program of research over the next 3 years is about bringing changes to the practices that people have. At the moment, we do what we would do in the 1980s, but with computers next to us. What you really need to do is completely change that in such a fashion that people engage with digital, as opposed to trying to digitize a paper-based and analog world. And part of the work that we're doing is setting up potential living labs in the UK, as well as the existing living labs in Ireland. And we're going to be talking about bringing in digital manufacturing ideas, such as universal enterprise architecture, theory of constraints, total quality movement, digital twins, workflow management and value pathways, and the quantification of all that for analysis so that you can optimize systems. And at the very core of all of this, though, as I said, is we must talk about fairness and security. If you do not have accountable, transparent AI, where we know how decisions are made, how the algorithms are designed and what type they are, how it is being used, and whether or not there is steps for fairness, you're not going to have a system that people trust. And that is essential. That requires not only very good legislation and actively changing regulatory responses with secondary legislation, but also leadership on the part of the health service and leadership in standards. And what is happening now, very thankfully, is that the United States and the EU, as opposed to a couple of years ago where they were at loggerheads about this, coordinating together. And there's the EU-US Trade and Technology Council, which is part of making sure that the AI Act for Europe is working in concert with similar regulations in the United States. Because one of the lessons that I learned in the aftermath of the banking crisis and the review of the banking crisis that we had in the Oireachtas was that the era of national regulation is over. In the world of digital technology, in a world of AI, the idea of having national regulation is like the idea of having a pony and trap to go to work. It does not make sense. You need to have transnational regulatory frameworks. You must have the sharing of information and knowledge in that context. And under those conditions, you can still preserve the capacity to protect citizens and also have democratic accountability. It doesn't remove that. But if you have national systems, they can be predated upon, you can engage in regulatory arbitrage actions, and the end result, as we all found out between 2012 and 2014, is a disastrous collapse of trust, as well as a collapse of the system. And we know even recently, our security system is leaky because of the collapse of the health service system in a few months ago. So all of this is happening in real time. France has been rejuvenated this week because of the re-election of Emmanuel Macron, and they are pushing harder for more market knowledge, to the design of AI systems to be similar to that of the medical devices regulation from the European Union, and that they be all part of notified bodies, and that the Commission has the right to yank away that power from notified bodies as well. And really looking for that element of maintaining fairness and security in the system in order to develop trust amongst the population. Ideally, over the next few months, that Ireland begins to go, as Martin Curley has said, from a digital laggard to a digital leader, and use that moment of cooperation between the United States and Europe to really improve the digital health space, to get that IHI done, to get at the very least a share cared record up and running, and to move towards the ultimate goal of having a unified electronic healthcare record system in place in Ireland, which can then interface with the machine learning and AI technologies, which can be discussed by the people who are the true experts, the engineers and the patient supporters here. And I would close with the idea that at every point, these conversations and actions and regulations must always be citizen-centered and patient-centered. If they are not, then they are failing from the very start. If we're to have a democratic, accountable society, if we're to have good patient outcomes and happy and healthy people in Ireland, we have to make sure that they are at the heart of all our thinking and decision making. So I'll close with that.
Charles, that was super. And actually, I'm really glad you didn't use slides, because it's really important that we have that narrative, and it's not something that you can, summarize into a load of bullet points. It is actually this discursive kind of, this is how we work out what the policies are going to be. And so delighted that you differentiated between digitization and digitalization in terms of the integration of those processes to really get the benefits of doing it, as opposed to just, replicating a fundamentally flawed paper-based system to something that can be infinitely more efficient, so that you can leverage the technology to get real advantage, as opposed to just using the technology to copy and paste something that already exists. So I think a really, really good overarching perspective on what digital health really means, and what we should be focusing on. So that, I think that was a super way to get us started. Our next speaker is Una, and Una Kearns is with My Patient Space. So a brilliant example of an application, a platform where technology has really put the patient in the center of the solution, and very much a patient space. So I'm going to hand over to Una.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm afraid I'm going to use some slides.
Well, no, that's okay. I mean, I have no problem with slides. I just think for the regulatory piece, it was really, really cool just to have it as an open discussion. Una, thank you.
Okay. So, so again, I'm Una Kearns. I'm the founder of My Patient Space. And what I'd like to cover here, I can only give you a snapshot of some of the stuff that we can cover. I thought I'd give you an overview about what we do and what real life examples we have in applying technology to patient-centric healthcare. And then what I'd like to do is to take a look at some considerations for adoption, especially in relation to AI and some major areas that need to be looked at that we've seen, and then we'll wrap up. Okay, so just very quickly. So what My Patient Space is, we provide, my slides are going here now. This is what we provide. We're all about patient-centric care. And what we provide is a no-code platform that really allows different types of healthcare organizations or life sciences or pharmaceutical companies to be able to produce highly personalized digital companions for patients to really support them during their healthcare journey. Okay. Now, there's kind of two main areas that we work with today. So in the life sciences space, we're seeing a huge move over where there is now more digital patient support programs. So where patients are on different types of medications, often traditionally pharmaceutical companies would provide a nurse line or some literature, but now what it's moving towards is much more rich digital companions that really help those patients get education about the disease, to be more informed, to adhere on the treatment and so forth. And the other areas then is around disease awareness and screening programs that earlier on in the life cycle that patients can be caught earlier in their disease journey, so they ultimately get better outcomes. And as we move over to healthcare and payers, this is really where we're working across a lot of the areas, again, with the digital transformation team, the HSE, and a lot across the main acute hospitals, where it's really helping them streamline healthcare services by being able to connect patients much better during their healthcare journey, and to be able to provide the tools to clinicians to be able to more smartly triage and to be able to provide services back to them. We'll take a look at some examples here, but in essence, with our platform, patients are given access to a digital health companion that guides them through their journey. We help digitize the workflow to be able to deliver healthcare at scale. And we provide interfaces and tools for clinicians to be able to enable them to be able to provide the healthcare better to their patients. Okay, these are some examples, and we'll take a look about how this can be applied. So one area here is this is with sleep apnea. So this has been rolled out across Ireland today with ResMed PEI. And these are patients who are on a sleep apnea journey. Now they're given access to a digital patient companion. But then what happens is when a patient is having trouble, using their sleep apnea device, we automatically know, so we can automatically triage calls to nurses to contact the patient to help them. We can automatically send articles to patients to tell them how to fix what's going on with their device. So this is putting patients much more in control of what their journey is. We also help across other areas. So one area that's been rolled out across Ireland is an area around menopause after cancer. This is a research trial that's going on with UCD, the Irish Cancer Society. But in this case, patients are given access to a digital companion. But this companion is also part of the treatment, but it's also helping manage the research study. So in this case, patients are empowered with information to understand menopause, understand symptoms of menopause, to be able to track their hot flushes. But the clinicians can automatically interface with these patients and help them on their journey. But the patients are given what they need to help them manage their symptoms. But then if we take a look at some other areas, one is around diabetes management, where patients are given access to digital health companions to help them understand diabetes and how they manage it better as they're beginning on their lifestyle. Or another area we're working across in South America is around prostate cancer screening, and to be able to help men earlier in the disease understand what's their risk of getting prostate cancer, to understand based on their PSA, is there a chance that they have prostate cancer, to be able to understand more about the illness. But all these things are really helping patients self-manage better. But one aspect, I'm just going to give you one very basic example in relation to AI, is in relation to language, and we'll discuss this a bit further on. So in relation to diabetes management, we're doing one program across the Middle East. But if you go across the Middle East, there's so many workers from so many parts of the world. And we're starting to see this in Ireland today, where there's all the Ukrainian refugees are coming in here. Is how do we provide healthcare and information to all these patients across multiple different types of languages so they can understand what's going on? And how can we start applying AI to translate healthcare information automatically to those patients so they can get the right information that they need? Another great example here is one program we're working on in Dublin is around renal chronic kidney disease. And this is where patients are given access to a digital companion. This is at St. James's Hospital currently, to help them better understand their chronic kidney disease, to be able to track their symptoms, to be able to understand, what types of therapies are available to them, be able to understand nutrition and to tie into services. But along with this are tools to help the clinicians in managing and triaging those patients more efficiently too. So based on known algorithms, we can automatically calculate the risk progression scores of patients of the risk of progressing on chronic kidney disease. So the teams can understand better how to triage their services and give them to the right people. But these types of things can be applied across many different types of therapy areas, where we help the patients have the education information about how they can self-manage, how they can report how they're getting on in their disease away from the healthcare setting. And so these information can be applied to triage better and provide tools for clinicians to manage those patients better. And if I take a look, one article which I think is really good, that I thought was very good, is from the World Health Organization. And they've produced a really good document around ethics and application of technology in relation to health. So I would really recommend people to take a look at this. And I think one quote at the beginning of it, which I think is absolutely fabulous, was from Stephen Hawking, is our future is a race between growing power of technology and the wisdom with which we use it. And I don't think in any other area, it's how we apply a technology and how we know how to apply technology in the healthcare space. So let's just take a look. I'm going to only bring up a few kind of key things which we've learned over this time. We've been rolling out these digital companions across many jurisdictions, many continents, and across many therapy areas. And I just want to highlight a few things. So one is around clinical decision making. So AI and these types of technologies can be great to aid the clinicians in making decisions on healthcare. Okay, so one example, as we saw in CKD, is the clinicians really like having this as a tool to understand the risk progression so they can allocate services appropriately, and they can also incent the patient for how they're supposed to take care of themselves. I'm just back actually from South America, And one of the things that they're doing there in South America is being able to provide specialized services out to further regions by leveraging AI to automatically detect lung cancer in patients from radiography images. Now that's fantastic, because what that can do is it can help bring specialized services to more remote areas that can aid in earlier diagnosis of patients. But the next thing I'd like to talk about is explainability. And when we come to AI or these automatic algorithms, is in healthcare, people want to know exactly what they're dealing with, whether it's what content they're giving to patients or what was made in that decision process. Where we're using the risk progression algorithm in CKD, it's a very known algorithm that's been applied. Does that make sense? It's not based on some, algorithm that's just come up over machine learning over a period of time. So this is where explainability needs to come into AI with healthcare. Like if you go to Amazon, it gives you shopping recommendations, that's grand, or, which holiday is cheaper than another holiday, or which holiday I recommend. They're grand to use with AI. It's not critical. But where it's coming down to a patient's life or their diagnosis, you need to really understand what's behind this. There's a whole area within artificial intelligence now called explainability. And I think that area there has huge potential in building trust on these algorithms and apply to the healthcare setting. The other thing I'd like to bring up is sources of data. So as we're building decisions and we're building on these algorithms, we need to make sure where we're getting the sources of data from. And they're coming from a variety of groups so that the algorithms are used will apply to all people. And you're not giving a diagnosis for a white male 40-year-old to somebody who's Black and in the middle of Africa, and the diagnosis may be incorrect. The next thing is around self-management and adherence. I think technology and what we have found with patients using our technologies, they feel connected, they feel better informed, they feel more empowered, because education and information and communication is everything. I think often in a healthcare setting is information is given very quick to patients they don't understand. So that often delays clinical settings. It makes them more inefficient, but the patients don't know how to manage. So this is really where, by leveraging this technology, we can provide better information to the patient so they understand their illnesses better. They can take informed decisions about managing it. They can track their progress. Equity in healthcare, I think, is a huge thing, because I'm just back from the Middle East. I'm just back from Latin America, and it also applies in Ireland, is where I think AI and technology can help bring healthcare services to everybody if applied and considered. Language is a very simple thing. AI and languages is probably one of the best applications of AI today. Does that make sense? We can all go to Google Translate and we get it across different languages. Well, for somebody who's in a healthcare setting and they go in speaking Russian into an Irish hospital, they don't understand anything. The nurses, we don't have money for translation services. Well, we can start applying those tools that were developed around AI to help provide that information. Accessibility to digital. We do find across different age groups, there is a divide. This has changed over COVID, but we need to make sure whatever tools we're giving to people, they can use them and that they're used easily and they're age friendly in what we're doing. And it's not a barrier. And I think the other thing is accessibility of services, like even that example, which I thought was just fabulous, where they're able to bring lung cancer screening out into remote locations where they don't have the specialty services. I think this technology can bring education to everybody and information to everybody around their healthcare. Risk and compliance is a huge thing, but I think a lot of it is in the adoption. So I'll give you one example. So we go to language, because language everybody understands. If I've developed out all this information set around a certain language, but every single piece of content that generally goes in the healthcare setting today has to be approved. It has to go through regulatory approval and everything. You can't just give validated information that all that around it. So how does that then combine with doing automatic translation around that stuff? Do people have the confidence to say, okay, I will let the patient decide. If I don't speak that language, I will go with Google Translate, but I know it may not be perfect. Is that an okay risk to take? Is it better that the patient understands 80% of it versus nothing? Do you know what I mean? So these are things that have to be considered. And data governance and privacy is another huge area. One of the biggest barriers to adoption right now is trust, and trust in these technologies. And it's very important to be worried about this. People need to make sure that the technology they're doing, that their data is protected, that the hospitals who are adopting it have confidence that the data that they're giving is protected. And I think patients need to be able to have control themselves about whether they want their data shared. I know if I was going to a major disease and I could provide my information that could be used as part of algorithms to make it easier for people, I would want to do this. So why don't we give the choice back to patients if their information can be collected for these types of things, and that it makes sure that it's all anonymous and it's used appropriately, and transparency in how that data is managed. But we've only got 10 minutes, so I've covered a huge amount of information here. And these are just a snapshot of key things that are highlighted to me that we need to make sure we address as we're moving forward with technology. So I think the key thing is we have found, and we see day in, day out, that it makes a huge difference in healthcare delivery and supports better outcomes, both for patients and for clinicians. Okay, and it can really help scale health services, which every area needs. But no matter what, it has to be used wisely. And we always need to consider how it fits with clinical workflows and how it's adopted. And I think the biggest thing is medicine has been around for hundreds of years, okay? And medicine is based on interactions, and it's based on doctors working with people and how everybody fits together. What is very important is that we use technology to really help doctors and clinicians continue to do what they do, but do it much more scalable and much easier, but it's supporting them and not trying to take over the really important role that they play too. Okay.
Una, that was just super, and just so much of it resonated. I think for anybody listening in, I've just noticed we have 40 people dialed in for a webinar, and I know this is recorded, so to have 40 live listening in today, I think is really great. But just so much of that resonated for me, and it always struck me, and I know Marco and I talked about this before, is so many people, when you're in that appointment with your doctor, and obviously a lot of people are nervous, they are fearful, they may have gotten some bad news, whatever it might be, and there's that shell shock part, and the clinician with the best care in the world is having to explain complex things to people, and they leave with a packet of drugs. And I'm going to say a specific example. My father had a heart attack years ago, and he leaves the doctor's surgery with his new medication he has to take and a set of instructions on how to live healthily and better. And he takes those drugs religiously every single day ever since. The whole how to live better and healthy, that kind of fell by the wayside after a while. And we're so good at adhering to the chemical, the medical, the prescriptive medicinal part, and not always so good on the other elements, which are so much part of that people empowerment. The doctors can do so much, but the patient has to work with the doctor too to manage their own wellness, and actually using technology to do that supports both parties. But certainly from your point of view, the bit that you expressed so nicely there at the end, the scalability of that, so that we don't have people constantly in the system in appointments when there's no real requirement, when that can be done through technology. I think that is a really important value outcome that we get from digitalization of our health service. So thank you so much for that. There's so much more in it, which I know we're going to cover in the Q&A. And I see a question has come through. We've got a few questions in the chat already, so I have no doubt one of them is from Marcus himself. So I have no doubt that we're going to have a lively debate when we get to the Q&A session. But speaking of lively and live, now we're going to have actually our live demo, because our next speaker is Paolo Bruno, who is, as I say, dialing in from sunny, glorious Palermo today. And you will notice his very stylish hoodie that he's wearing. And there is a reason for that. So I don't want to spoil the surprise. So Paolo, I'm just going to hand over to you. Oh, you're on mute.
Yeah, okay. Let me to share my desktop. Let me know when you will see my desktop.
Okay.
You can see my desktop?
Not yet.
Not yet. I think I need to restart the browser. Just 1 second.
That's okay. We can chit chat. We can talk to you. You can freestyle while you're doing that, or we can start some Q&A. Marcus was just saying, what a great presentation. We've got off to such a good start. There was a question, so I'm just going to read it out so that Charles can start thinking about it, because this one came in when you were speaking, which is, what do you think can be the possible challenges related to having unique identifiers which are going to be shared among health providers? So that is obviously, and I think Una referred to this a little bit as well, is that trust in the system and security. Privacy being protecting the individual, the person's data, and security being the thing that protects the system so that your private data can stay private. But there are a load of challenges in that. And I think that's the one that is bandied around a lot in terms of why we shouldn't do this. I always argue, however, people don't seem to be nearly so concerned about what they're happy to share with Mark Zuckerberg on Facebook. So I don't know why they're so concerned about why what they would have of their health data that they wouldn't be prepared to share with someone who we have, you know, in most countries, in democratically elected free countries, why you wouldn't want to share that data with people who are deemed to be trusted. But anyway, that is something for the Q&A. But again, just love, and again, it comes down to that point maybe that's that Una raised around wisdom. And the one thing about artificial intelligence is, well, it is artificial, which is intelligence, but intelligence and wisdom are not the same thing. So Paolo, I'm just rabbiting on here. Oh, and we have something, your screen is coming up now.
Okay.
And you are now live.
Okay. You can see my desktop?
We can.
Okay. So let me short introduce about Italtel. Italtel is a telecommunication company. And we have developed, we can introduce our telemedicine product, Dr. Link. So what's happened in these years? We've created before a unified communication based on WebRTC. So for make a call, audio, video communication like Zoom, like WebEx, or like Google Meet. On this product, we have developed a use case, a vertical use case on telemedicine, Dr. Link. So with Dr. Link, what you can do? You can make an audio video call with the doctor. You can connect medical devices to the app, to Dr. Link, and you can send all this information in real time, live to the doctor. You can do this when you are in video communication with the doctor, or maybe when you are at home, alone at home, and maybe you need to take a vital sign maybe 2-3 times per day. So in this case, we will send all this information automatically to the backend of Dr. Link. So the doctor can analyze all the information that arrives from patient and maybe can call the patient to ask some more details about its vital sign. How it works. You can see on the screen at the moment, on my right side is a Dr. Link, is the app. Simple, you can click on the middle of this app and you can check if the doctor is online or not, or maybe if you can make a vital sign detection using one of these particular sensors that we have already integrated. For example, we can choose some simple pulse oximeter, or maybe we can choose a PC300 that is in this video is an hub where we can take ACG, temperature, blood pressure, glycemia, or maybe ACG 3-channel. Another sensor that we have already integrated is a stethoscope. A Bluetooth stethoscope is very small. You can make the auscultation of your heart from remote site. Or maybe you can use one of that bracelet, either wrist or either arm, is just a blood pressure, Bluetooth blood pressure. And look how is changed the technology from in 5 years. How is the dimension from this hub is a PC300, from this one is another hub. With this is like an altar. You can use and wear this sensor, and you can analyze ACG, temperature. You can monitoring anyway. You can make a sleep apnea. You can monitoring pulse oximeter. You can use like pulse oximeter. And the other sensor is another one that I have inside, I am wearing, is the heart. With this one, you can make ACG like in hospital. Is 8 or 12 leads. So without go to the hospital and you are at home, I can show you how it works. I can choose, anyway, you can see the light is now on. I am like Iron Man at the moment, like Tony Stark anyway. I can choose which type of user I am. how long time where I need to take the ECG. And simple way, I will connect to the sensor. Anyway, there is a video or a picture that show me how can use the electrode. Then I need to, the signal will, there's too much moving. I can recording. Anyway, there are too much noise at the moment because I am in a room with many machines inside. And automatically I can send all this information to the backend of Dr. Link. Anyway, I can show on the desktop of my app the ECG. On the bell on the right side on Dr. Link backend, I will see the bell that is arrived some new measurement. And now I can gelocate the patient. In some conditioning, I need to gelocate the patient, not in any case, but sometimes I need to do that. So if there is, for example, another sensor that we have integrated is a man-down sensor, I can send near patient some operators that are near the patient. So I can send the first emergency to the patient at home for give some help. Another condition that we do with Dr. Link is to check all the electronic medical records. And in a chart, the doctor can see all the condition about patient, all the diseases, all the relapses, all the information about identity or history about the patient. So all the medical conditioning actually or before, all the conditioning about the family medical conditioning. The doctor can prescribe a pharmacological therapy or not pharmacological therapy. We can check if the patient take a drug or not. We can monitoring all the clinical events that occur to the patient, all the relapses that occur to the patient, all the information that arrive from the paraclinical test. So I can check if the patient is following the therapy that the doctor is prescribed. I can check all the parameters, all the vital sign, if is better now or not. So all this information are stored inside the clinical folder of the patient. I can anyway detect all the ECG that I have already taken from the patient and see again, or maybe better, I can see all the information that arrive from a sensor like the body scale. So I can check all the body mass index, the bone mass, the body fat about the patient, and analyze in real time all this information. Another type of sensor that we have integrated is a spirometer, the lung capacity. So I can analyze all this information in real time and check if something is there is something problem, there is some problem or not, or maybe I can see again the last lung capacity that I have already taken and check all this information. At the moment, for example, I am inside the Dr. Link with a user that can see everything, but it's normal that when we deploy this product to a real live hospital, we can divide this information. Just the doctor can see the vital sign, not everybody, and the technical, just we can show all the information that arrive from sensor, because the most important things is that the sensor that we give to a patient, we need to monitoring the vital sign of the sensor too. So if there is a low battery, if there is a low condition of connectivity, if there is some problem about the memory of the devices. So all this information are stored inside Dr. Link. Another possibility is to make a video call during the visit with the doctor. So easily the user just push the central button of the app and can call the doctor. So let me turn off the microphone, so for some problem. When I am in live with the doctor, so at the moment I am, this is my patient, and then I have the doctor just in front of me. The doctor can ask me, please use, for example, a spirometer. So I can check just on the central, the green central button, check and use the spirometer, connect the spirometer to the tablet. I think that okay, is connected and can start the measurement. So in real life, the doctor can see all the information that arrive from the sensor that is used the patient to the doctor. When the information arrives to the gauge of the app, I can send the information to the doctor, and you will see on the back end of Dr. Link that a new measurement is arrived. I can check now is 15 minutes before 5 o'clock. Anyway, I can be geolocated on the map or not, and I can check again the measurement that is arrived. So imagine that, because the most important things, all this platform anyway are the information that we stored in. So you can imagine to integrate this with the artificial intelligence, and the best condition is when the artificial intelligence engine can make a prediction about this data. So the doctor know before 1 week, 2 weeks before, how will be the data, that threshold in the next 2 weeks. This is the most important things. So at the moment I am still in live with the doctor. I can stop my video call, and I can check again on my dashboard, because with Dr. Link, anyway, you can make a different things. The Dr. Link is connected with the HIFA, with the Italian agency, Italian drugs agency. It's connected with the, in emergency case, we can connect Dr. Link with the DICOM viewer plugin. So it's not a REST-PAX product, but we can, in emergency case, we can see in the DICOM viewer the radiographical information from patient directly from remote, so the doctor don't need to stay in the hospital for check some information. Anyway, at the moment I think that for Dr. Link is all. Let me know if there is some question for answer.
Thank you so much for that. Sorry, I was busy trying to unmute myself. That was kind of exciting just to see it all happening in real life. And just, I think that some of putting in the question around sharing data, and I think just the more that the patient is involved in collecting the data, I think they feel probably possibly more confident then, or as you say, empowered, and we're more likely to trust processes and systems that we are in, as opposed to ones that we are just observers of. And I think that actually that seeing that live environment, I certainly think would inspire trust as much as anything else. So thank you so much for sharing that with us, and delighted to see your ECG is okay. Mine last one was not, and I keep meaning to book another one, but anyway, I haven't done that yet. But thanks for the good reminder. Hopefully I'll make it to the end of the week and nothing bad will happen before then till I get it sorted out. Before we get to the end of the week, we are nearly at the end of this session, but we have our final speaker, which is my good buddy, Miss Dr. Marco Alfano from the IBI, who is going to give us an update on everything that's actually happening within the digital health cluster. Obviously, a huge amount of research going on in this area. And Marco, I'm going to hand over to you for the final presentation of our session today.
Thank you, John, very much. And And thank you to all the speakers for their wonderful presentation. When I organized the webinar, really, I wanted to give a different views of how technology and the balance between technology and the human role. And you provided really exactly what I was hoping for. And it's very important. It's very important because, of course, technology is more and more spread everywhere, and in healthcare, of course, is so important. And you showed us, Charles showed us as all the legal, ethical challenges, and Yuna also the technical, and showed us Yuna and Paolo showed us some live example of how technology can be used in really the best way. And so in IVI, we are working in digital transformation in different sectors. And we have a cluster that is dealing with digital transformation in health. And specifically, we look at the digital transformation in healthcare for a person activated and health and well-being, person really at the center. And what this means is that we have this vision, because there are drivers that tell us that, and you have heard, I'm sure that you heard a lot of times about the rise in aging population and the chronic disorders, and the COVID-19 that of course has accelerated the use of remote services. And there is a growing demand for remote care and the monitoring with the hospital at home paradigm. And we just saw with Paolo how this can be really achieved. And at the same time, pressure to cut healthcare costs, and also very important topic, active engagement of people, patients in their health and well-being. People are asking, but also the agencies, the government, the healthcare professionals themselves want people to be active in managing their health. Some barriers are the disconnect still. Presently, the disease management is still the main central focus of the healthcare versus the person-centered health and well-being. And most of the health apps and services work as a silos, even though we saw two wonderful examples of integrated applications. And health data, we have talked a lot about data. They are important, but they are scattered among different sites. They are really not managed in the best way. Still a low health literacy in patient caregivers, and so that really to be able to understand what's going on with their health, and some resistance from physicians about using remote services. At the same time, there is a demand from market that the World Health Organization in the strategy has really put this patient-centered paradigm in really at the center of its policy. Also the EU Digital for Europe, in Ireland, there's Launcher Care as a citizen care master plan that puts people at the center. And also some very important organization companies as INS and Deloitte that really consider very critical to have care models that focus on patient health and well-being. So that we have this nice picture from ECH Alliance, where patient citizens are at the center. But to me, they are the center, but not as a passive user, but really as an active user. This is why in IVI we talk and we work on personal empowerment with three main steps: comprehension of health conditions, informed decision, of course, with healthcare professionals. We don't want to remove the doctors, the nurses, but we want to improve the communication between patients and doctors. And of course, self-management of conditions in daily life, keeping people at home as much as possible, and from there really to deal with the healthcare system. And so this has brought us to create this vision, and we apply in what we call the digital health ecosystem that is made of all the stakeholders as two main components that are where everything is integrated. There is an integrated communication among all the different stakeholders and collaboration among them, but also there is an integrated platform so that we have a platform apps that all interact among them. And again, we saw some wonderful example just before, but it's also important that people play an active role so that there is an important component that is an intelligent empowering agent that somehow allows people really to interact, to have an active role and to facilitate their interaction, their understanding and their understanding of health information and the interaction with the healthcare world, so that they don't have to become doctors, but we facilitate their interaction. And so when you see this as from the architecture point of view, we see that beside the infrastructure, data are very important, and this is really, they have to be managed and to be governed in the best way, and the application so important. But on top of that, the communication, the collaboration. So integrated communication, integrated collaboration, integrated platforms, everything must collaborate. And that's so important. We have some projects that you see in the outer circle, that where we go from looking at working on the developing digital health ecosystem capability maturity framework to work on and develop an intelligent empowering when using AI in a responsible way for personal empowerment on health and well-being, on developing and implementing some digital health partners for really making this digital transformation to become a reality, and also to understand how what is already available, like we are working on some understanding of usability of hemophilia patient portal to see how the applications that are already there, that are provided in Ireland, how they work and how they can be also improved. So everything is interconnected. Everything works really as a single, from different parts, but as a single ecosystem. And just to show you a zoom of one of the application, one of the projects we are working on, and by the way, gave the title of the webinar, that is the use AI in a responsible way for empowering people. We said people must be empowered, so that we are developing, and we are working on the theoretical part. We are universities, and we are working on the theoretical part, but also on the practical development of an intelligent empowering agent that guides the user to understand what is or her complaints that you can have. Sometimes you feel something, and what do? You go to the doctor, you go to the hospital, or you start to understand. If for sure, if you go to Google, you get lost. So an agent that can help you at that moment to understand more what's going on, and so that guides you. Okay, what is your complaint? What's happening? And the user uses the user profile, so all the different information from the user and all the information that is available on the web, so that the web is very rich. So it's not that we don't want to use, it's just that we want to provide the users with the right information, so that the output is tailored to the information that is really useful for the users, simple, so that they can understand, and trustworthy, is a good quality output. And so that we give information about, for example, a complaint, that we give three levels of information: basic information, so that the user can really understand what's going on and about the complaint; advanced information, because it maybe you want to go deeper and you want to understand some details, or you want to go to the web to see also some correlation. So you want to go wider, and so that with this process, it really becomes empowered person. And of course, this is it goes a feedback, and so that it gives a feedback to the system, and so that this is a continuous interaction between the system and the user. It can really understand and understand what's going on. And there is also some indication on if, for example, you see the background color of the complaint, if, for example, some indication if you should go to the hospital or see a doctor right away. So, but at least he gets some information. This is recorded and it can be sent as, for example, was shown before, can be sent all the searches that the user does, all the interaction that the user does with the system can be recorded and can be sent to the doctor. So the doctor immediately knows what the user, what the patient has been searching, has been trying to understand and to all his steps. So just to conclude, this is one project we are working as the others, but of course we want to, we are already collaborating with many different partners, but of course we would like very much to have more collaborate more, so that of course we are partnering with leading organization, companies and networks to expand the digital health transformation for person-activated health and well-being, our cluster, so that if you, whatever your companies, enterprises, public bodies, if you're interested, please join this opportunity. Please contact either me or Paul Inen, who is the operation manager of IVI, or Marcus Alfert, who is the director of IVI, and we can provide you with more information. We can set up a meeting or whatever, and we will be very, very glad to collaborate and to hear from you. So with that, thank you very much, and John, back to you.
Unmuting myself. Marco, thank you so much for that. To all of you, I mean, I'm really glad that the way you articulated that final piece around patient empowerment, putting patients at the center. It is so many times we see this, it's customer centric or patient centric, but they almost become this passive object in the center that everyone is focusing on and looking at and pulling from, but that they're not an active participant. And I think the way you putting that empowerment, that people empowerment piece at the center of all of this conversation is so critically important. I mean, I think from very, very start to end, everything that Charles talks around in terms of policy, in the end, this is about how citizens live their lives, how all of us live. And nothing matters more to us than our health. And we all say that all of the time. But because of that, this idea of empowerment at the very, very center is so critical to how we adopt the technologies. And it struck me, as someone who uses a fitness app all the time on my phone, and how much information I put there. I think as a generation, and the generations coming behind us, we are so accustomed now to wellness, being on our devices and sharing and populating our devices with our wellness data. I think that might help with the adoption of technology as we move into when you're not well, when you're in need of health services, and actually looking at those two things at kind of the opposite ends of the same spectrum. We've got wellness at one end and unwellness at the other. We're very happy to share our wellness and the gamification of our wellness at one end, but we seem so unhappy to share our unwellness data, or are very, very curious or perturbed by people having access to our unwellness. And that maybe by being more empowered in all of that, we might build more trust into it. I also noticed that you mentioned Google, and of course, Dr. Google is not digital health. I was reviewing the newspapers on a radio show recently, and one of the stories in the paper was the prolific Dr. Googling that a lot of people in Ireland do compared to other countries. And I said, it may be something to do with how hard it is to get hold of a GP around here. I'm very, very lucky. I have one that lives literally in the house next door. So I literally have to jump across the fence, assuming my problem is not a sore back or a sore leg. But yeah, it can be challenging. So a lot of people start online. But look, that's getting I don't want to get flippant about it. I do want to get back into the questions that came in. And it did, I suppose we're all kind of talking about the same thing when it comes to empowerment, when it comes to sharing data. It all comes down to a matter of trust And I think that was one of the first questions that came up. And one of the things that is so critical when we look at the policy and regulatory part of all of this, who do we trust with our data? Why should we? And what is in place for us to feel protected? I often feel that there is this challenge between, just because we know everything, having all the data doesn't make it anything more trustworthy. But how do we trust in the absence of having all of the data, in the absence of seeing or being able to control everything in the process? Charles, I'm going to put that back over to you.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's a running theme throughout all the presentations, and it's a very important one. And first of all, I think you have to realize that the Irish population doesn't really trust giving their information to their government. The CSO has for years tried to insert various questions relating to income into the quarterly National Household Survey. And whenever they trial that, the response rate plummets. Which gives you an indication of how people think about their country. And it always reminds me of that scene in Simpsons movie where you have Tom Hanks doing his cameo saying, you know, the US government has lost its credibility, so they decided to borrow some of mine. And I've always felt that that might be something the Irish government might have to stoop to at some point. But that is, you know, the lighthearted aspect of there is a low trust situation. Failures like in, you know, the health service earlier this year with the security protocols, the general problems that existed with the rolling out of the public services card, these have chipped away at public trust about government minding data well. And it's difficult to regain that trust, unfortunately. At the same time, the government has to be more explicit about what that data is being used for and what it can't be used for. So one of the great tools that everyone has outlined is better healthcare management, better patient management, putting the patient in control of their own health and wellness in a way that they couldn't before. But the flip side of that is that you know, the cloud knows everything about you and everybody can find out about you. And most importantly, your insurance company can find out about you. And as a result of that, they can say, gosh, look at this one. It's a walking claim. How do we dump that person? And it's creating an environment in which, you know, in the US, yes, that can happen. In Ireland, no, it can't. I mean, we have community rating and all these things which we don't spend enough time explaining to people, saying, well, we have these safeguards in place and it's not going to be like America where they suddenly find out you have cancer and you're going to get a letter in the post 3 days later saying, by the way, this terminates your insurance and please go die in a ditch somewhere. Ireland isn't like that.
But I think, sorry to interrupt, but just to cut across there, that point about cybersecurity is not absolute. As you said at the very, very start, the technology is racing ahead of the regulations and the cyber criminals are racing ahead of the technology constantly. So I hear what you're saying around the compromising of the HSE's cybersecurity earlier this year. Pretty much nowhere on the planet, government, not, you know, private companies with all the security experts in the world are immune to that. So we have to trust, we have to, in my mind, it's about taking trust as a relative thing. How much do I trust you? What is the probability of risk? And they're not things that people think about consciously, but it's like, do I trust it enough and what the risk is? And actually, what is the fallout, as you say, of someone getting access to that data? Okay, the wrong person gets access to that data and they might give it to your insurance company and your insurance company might then, as you say, leave you to die in a ditch, but we have other regulations to protect against that. So it's this, as you say, this complex ecosystem with so many parts in it and so many bad actors, but also very, very good actors in all of that, where there is positive intention.
Well, I think that positive intention thing, it has to be shown on a regular basis. And that, you know, if you look at how Wellcome Trust discussed how people should be informed about how their data is used, how it is shared, involving people in informed consent, that helps build that, and telling them, yes, there are, there's thousands of people in Russia that are out there to hack things for Bitcoin. And, that's a reality. But also that the Irish government makes it clear that, well, we do have a cybersecurity aspect, which we're taking seriously. We are building up that suite of people in the guards, in the defense forces, to actually deal with that, which is what other countries are doing right now. Is they're developing that capacity in their defense forces and in their police services. I think one of the most important things, though, is that when you come down to this issue of what people share, and you made this point earlier, people are willing to share incredible amounts of personal information with their friends on social media in a frightening way. And sign up to, I mean, when you sign up to Amazon, you give over your firstborn effectively, and nobody thinks twice about it, because gosh, I can order the latest Mills and Boon and have it at my door in 3 minutes. They don't think about that, but somehow or other, healthcare, they do. And I think what you need to do is educate the public that while surveillance capitalism is not necessarily a good thing, you've accepted a lot of it already. And what you do need to understand is that we have to make surveillance capitalism less insidious, while at the same time informing people that you can get so many benefits from digital health, from digital government.
I think that's the benefit part is the key piece there.
That you can really move into this space without panicking. And I think that that's something that you need to basically say, that everything in life is a balance of risks. And at the moment, we don't talk about that in a fair way.
That balance of risk, as you say, to reward. Una mentioned Amazon in her presentation, and I made a note, Una, as you were saying it. And of course, I'm very happy to share my data on Amazon. Why? Because the benefit to me is that they'll target me with stuff where I'll get the best deal. So I've got an economic gain and my win is quick. However, one thing I've always noticed with Amazon is I go online and I buy Mizuno trainers, Wave, Inspire, number, whatever. And I get my trainers. And as soon as I bought them, Amazon knows I've been looking for trainers, and then starts bombarding me with ads for trainers and going, but I've already bought them. So this is not that smart, this artificial intelligence, in that sense. It's like, didn't you log the fact, how many pairs do you think I need? And of course, Una, when you were writing it down, going, gosh, way to take too many drugs. I mean, if Amazon keeps if the artificial intelligence keeps hitting you with the medication that you've already taken, you could end up taking too much. You never know. You know when you've had too many trainers. Una, you mentioned Amazon there, and we've talked a bit, Charles and myself have just been chatting there about that bit about cybersecurity. Obviously, with a platform like yours, with so many players in that, and Paolo, this is to you as well. Where do you see the big challenges in terms of uptake, and what can you do as a platform, or what are you doing as a brand, as a platform, to provide the reassurance, the trust that people need?
Okay.
I think from our standpoint is we're very much always given out in a business to business context. Does that make sense? So, we go through huge audits with the major pharmaceutical companies or with the HSE and all the rest. We're generally not just technology to consumer. Does that make sense? Yeah. We're given out. I think, personally, from my view, I think it's the best way for healthcare to be delivered. And, in relation to trust and saying adoption is, I think generally we find when it's given out in a healthcare setting, patients don't have an issue adopting it. Does that mean that's what we found? So when it's given out in a trusted environment and it's gone through the rigors and it's gone through the control and you have the right certifications and you're putting all these things in place, generally we haven't found an issue with adoption. But we haven't just been going out saying, hey, any patient adopt from us. We're giving it out in a healthcare setting. Does that make sense? And, through them, I think is very important. And I also think back to Ireland just a little bit is, I think even if you find even during COVID and stuff like that, I think like the Irish population has had no issue doing their COVID vaccinations or getting certificates. And that was all as in a need. So when I think when this type of technology is given out in the right context, by the right people, with the right controls around it, I think people are very ready to adopt it. It's where it kind of goes completely off mark or in an uncontrolled setting. I think that's where a difference is. You know, so for us, we're very much true. We sell to governments, to hospitals, and to pharmaceuticals, and that's how our stuff is delivered, and that's how the trust is given.
And I think it's a really interesting point, bearing in mind there's a question in here, and it'll be an interesting one for Paolo as well, is we trust this system, this process in a clinical environment. And it's when it goes outside the clinical environment. And I'm thinking then in the context of what Paolo was talking about in those examples where things might be happening, I'm thinking of the doctor link in the context of someone maybe out in the field and it may not be in a clinical environment, and the opportunities for using and putting in getting all these tests done, and they may not be always done by, you know, your consultant in your doctor's surgeries. And so it says here, what if we do actually want AI to replace clinicians in some instances, and or change the power balance information between service users and service providers? And then the question goes on to say, sorry, I'm just going to scroll down. What is the experience of AI successfully challenging power structures within health and social services? Okay, well, that's a lot. There's a lot of loaded stuff in there, but I'm going to just go back to that piece just to tie in with what Una has just said. This clinical environment versus being in a non-clinical setting, because I'm thinking about, Paolo, some of the stuff that you're talking about there and that remote access, that can be used maybe by paramedics or people in emergency situations on the side of a road and not always in a hospital. So this is a huge opportunity for these digital services. But what happens then if it's, you know, when it goes away from the clinical environment?
Okay, just need to make a presentation about the product. In some condition, you cannot use this product as you wish or as you want. All the data must be secure. The data must be encrypted. For example, we have studied the possibility to have the electronic medical records inside the blockchain, because a blockchain is immutable. Nobody can modify the records. Anyway, it's not the records, but anyway. Another possibility is that when we deliver a solution like a Dr. Link, we need to pass all the OWASP tests. From the point of view, for the cybersecurity point of view, without OWASP test, you cannot go live. Another condition is that inside your product, you need to have an activity log about to trace all the all the action that can be done from doctor, from the nurse, anyway, from every people that access to the platform. From the point of view of the patient, I cannot say, if you need to certify the Dr. Link like a medical device, you cannot download your app from the store and install inside your smartphone. Because when you talk about a wellness app, is a wellness app just for fitness. We are talking here just the data that come from medical device like this one, are a medical device to you are not, let me say, just for gaming. This is a medical.
No, I understand. I understand that. I understand that it's not for gaming for now, but I'm talking about adoption, I suppose, as we go forward, and the fact that people are going to be wearing more wearable devices potentially in the future, that allows them to be more trackable by their medical professionals. And so that there is that issue of trust there. And as you say, the blockchain and cybersecurity, well, blockchain will be a very important, I think, have a very important role to play potentially in all of that. I'm going to go back over to Marco now, because I do want to, you mentioned there about inviting companies and organizations who want to be part of the cluster and participate. We've covered a lot of topics here. So blockchains here, artificial intelligence, obviously data analytics, policy, regulatory frameworks, citizens' rights, all of that. Marco, if I was to ask you for your wish list of companies, types of companies or expertise that you, or insights that you would like to invite to be part of the cluster? What kind of companies would be on your wish list right now?
Yeah, that's a very good question, John, because you're right, because what we are doing and what we are facing is really advancing technologies from all the different aspects, so that it's not just one specific element, because we say there is a new paradigm. There is all the different technologies that must converge. They must interact. They must interact and must cooperate. So it's really a coordinated effort that we are looking at. So of course the companies that develop healthcare technology, like just we saw, is for sure they are part, but not only them, because the companies like once Charlie was talking about insurance companies. Insurance companies are very important companies because they have a lot of data, they have a lot of information, and they deal with patients in a different, let's say, in a different way. Of course, it's related to healthcare, but they look at it as a very important aspect. So it's very interesting to deal with them and to understand what is because there are new models of providing healthcare services that we are facing now, and we'll be confronting. We are already confronting, and we'll be confronting more and more. And so these companies, people who we work on digital transformation. We say that in IVI, and there is a digital transformation. A digital transformation as a different aspect, and we wanted to understand with companies that really want to innovate, that are innovating or want to innovate. So all the healthcare stakeholders, but so both the technological, but also the let's say the companies that work in different sectors. Also, for example, the regulatory bodies are very important, because we cannot look at just one single aspect. Because if we look at one single aspect, we risk to lose the ecosystem I was talking about. We miss one very important piece of the ecosystem. So we have to work with as many different companies and different sectors as possible.
I think that's a really interesting point, and one that Charles brought up very early in his presentation was the fact that they were taking a lot of learnings from manufacturing in terms of digitalization versus digitization. And I've always found that really, really interesting. You know, we want people to be lateral thinkers and think outside the box. And yet when we go to do research, we tend to stay very much in our lane, and people become subject matter experts within that lane, within that box. And it's shutting us off from taking learnings from other sectors. And obviously, and a lot of businesses are open to, I think we've all realized we're in this giant ecosystem for the wicked problem solvings of the planet. And I think everything then, health relates to food, relates to sustainability. They are all interlinked. And actually a lot of the regulatory issues that we face in terms of data and cybersecurity for health, we also have to address those challenges for data and track and trace for medical products, for pharmaceuticals, but also for food and food security. So these are huge, these are challenges that we can borrow and learn a lot from across each sector. And there's a gem of a question here. I think Una may have answered it very hers when she quoted Stephen Hawking and the difference between wisdom and the technology and the AI, because Marcus I know is putting in some of these questions, but this is not one from him, but a conversation I had with him the other day, and we're talking about, is artificial intelligence any intelligence at all? Because one thing for me is always intention and awareness, and the technology will never know why it's arriving at its decision, other than it is programmed to make decisions based on certain algorithmic rules. So the question here is, how important is it that doctors understand how AI algorithms reach their decision. Now, that is a big, broad question, and I'm happy to open it to any of you who want to unmute yourself. It'll be the who's first on the draw to press the unmute button to answer it. But I think the challenge in answering this question is the term doctors. How important is it that doctors understand how AI algorithms reach their decision? I think it depends on which kind of doctors, whether it's GPs or consultants or whatever. But anyone, quick on the draw, who wants to take that one? Una, you're on mute.
Hi, sorry. I think it depends on what the AI algorithm is being used for. Do you know what I mean? So, and it's also, what is that doctor's confidence in it? How is it? Everybody in medicine, they need clinical proof. Do you know what I mean? Is it been something that's been done that is clinical proof already? And has there been a lot of proof around this? And also, what is it being used for? Is it used as part of a clinical decision-making process so they can take that and then they can apply to what else they know? Do you know what I mean? So I think there has to be context around what that algorithm is being used for. Often in a lot of cases, I think is doctors and also things right now in medicine, it's often very much based on, I know what exactly are the formulas that are coming in to make this decision around these things. That's what we're doing we're doing a big project now on prostate cancer. So we know what somebody's risk is, or, whether it's considered high risk based on their age and based on their PSA levels. So, but that's based on clinical proof over a long period of time. Does that make sense? So I think if there's algorithm that's coming up with this heuristically and stuff like that, they need to have been proven out over a period of time that they have confidence in, or otherwise it can be explained out to them why they reached that decision, So I think
so the parallel there being, not all doctors will know the exact chemical makeup of every single drug they prescribe, but they know that it will have been through the FDA process. It will have gone through rigorous testing over years. They will know all the side effects of everything, and they will be able to prescribe with confidence. And it goes exactly the same for AI algorithms reaching decisions. Doctors will be able and should be able to confidently say, for this algorithm and this decision, I know it has been rigorously tested over X amount of data, over X amount of patient cases, and it is completely trustworthy insofar as anything can be 100% right.
Yeah. But then in another side of it, if it's more experimental, but it's just providing information that maybe they can use to help point them in the right direction, well, maybe that's okay then, because it's still their judgment that has to be used. So I think it depends on what is the algorithm, what is it being applied to.
So that's I think a very fair answer. Charles, you have unmuted yourself there. I think you have something to add.
Yeah, I would just add that I think that I would agree with everything that Una has said so far. I would just add to it that first of all, it should be beyond doctors, and I think there's a difference between sort of putting the trust in a process that certifies things, and then and actually understanding the basic building blocks of it. And I think that there's an element to which future medical professionals will need to have an element of technological literacy, which they have not had up until this point. It has taken a long time to get doctors to accept evidence-based medicine. This is yet another step in evidence-based medicine, but it is also requiring an element of technological literacy, which was not part of their training in the past. And it'd be important for them to have that, to understand how these tools evolve over time. They will not be the same as they were, in 20 years' time as they are now. And it's an element of technological literacy that will enable them to educate themselves in that into the future. And that will be the crucial component for them being effective co-decision makers with these technologies and practitioners in the future. And that would be the point that I would make on that.
Charles, that's a really interesting point, and something actually that strikes me when I asked Marco, who do we want to have involved? And of course, the education system of doctors are a big stakeholder when we talk about people empowerment, and particularly in the context of one of the questions that I put there around, that balance of power. And I I say this knowing quite some doctors and have quite a few friends in the medical profession. So, you know, but it is that deference that we hold. And I hear certainly my parents talk with, you know, when they're going to the doctor, and my doctor says, and it's this trust that almost like we need to have it, because we're literally putting our lives in our hands. So I kind of just want to trust them so much. So we will, because I don't have an alternative to not trusting them. That is just, you know, incomprehensible. But it is this deference for the medical profession, and rightly so, well-educated, amazing people. But now, as we talk about educating doctors, bringing in the next generation of doctors, the next generation of all medical professionals, and the role of technology in that, the relinquishing, we've all in our way, in various disciplines, careers, anyone, we've all relinquished a little bit of our sense of our power or our ownership of our expertise to technology. And the medical professional is no different to that. The legal profession is no different to that. And that we have to build that into the education maybe of our professionals, our medical professionals, such that they see this as something that is very much there to support them in their roles and not to compete with them in their roles. Is that? That's a nod. That's good. You can all unmute yourselves because we're very close to the end. We have 1 minute left. Marco, you're unmuted.
If I can, because I perfectly agree with all that. I would just add that I understand the question were about doctors, but I again talk about patients also, because of course I don't want the patients become doctors as well, and I don't want people that patients become digital technology specialists, but they must understand, because when we ask them, for example, to decide with whom they would like to share their data, if they don't understand their data, how can they decide to whom to share with? So that's kind of a thing. So what is the right amount? And this is really a big challenge. This is an interesting challenge. What is the right amount of information? What is the right amount of, let's say, education that we should give to patients, so that they really are able to actively participate, to understand also somehow the AI algorithms, at least at some level, what the AI, and again, interact in the best way with the doctors or with the other healthcare professionals to make the best decision, but really to have an active role.
There's a painting there behind me, and there's 2 words written on it, and it's trust and truth. And I always believe that people feel we have this societal demand right now where everybody says, I demand to know everything. I want all the data. I want to be able to see everything. I have a right to know. I have a right to know. And sometimes you might have a right to know, but you don't need to know. And actually that overwhelming amount of data without the knowledge, and indeed, as Una said, the wisdom to really understand what that means, then actually sometimes we should replace our need for truth and the need to know everything and replace it with trust. And how do we maintain trust in that system? And I think that's always the big challenge. My brother actually, ironically, is a vet. And, you know, I was talking about that one day. He said, well, the problem is my patients can't tell me where it hurts. But, and I'm not sure his patients really understand who he is or what he's doing, other than, pray to God, you know, he gets through the process without getting kicked or bitten. But it is that challenge, that relationship, when it's a human, it's a real patient, you have the opportunity to share where it hurts. You have to trust that your medical professional is listening and engaging with you in that. And that's part of the empowerment process as well, and building that relationship with our GPs. But then to go over to the next person on my screen beside me, it is Paolo, which is trusting that, but also all of that information that can be shared. Paolo, I'm going to give you your final word.
Yeah, I think that anyway, the pandemic is a change of the world. It's a change really the world. And now maybe there's someone that maybe have a doubt about the doctor, or maybe just look around, like I said before, Marco, around Google and found the solution. But product like Dr. Link are for support doctor. The last decision must be taken from doctor, not from the machine.
Yeah.
The last decision must be taken from doctor.
That's a strong final point. You're right. The technology is all there, but as I say, it's to support doctors, not to replace them. And I think the example that I kind of was trying to allude to earlier on, we're talking about it, is the possibility that technology can be used to in triage situations or emergency situations. The technology can be there to help ordinary citizens to manage their own situation or to make their own, gather some of their own information. That is possible in the future, but ultimately it will come down to the medical professional. That is what they are there for. Charles, you're next on my screen, which means Una, you're going to get the last word. Charles, you're next as I go around my.
Well, I think that everyone has pretty much said what I would want to say in this. There's just one term that has been missing and with data, and that is understanding. And at the moment, a lot of it's the balance between the data and the communication of that to bring about understanding, not only for the medical practitioners, but also their patients. And, in the final analysis, I would go back to our traumatic experience of the banking crisis. That happened because a lot of people didn't know what was going on and they didn't know how things were working. And ultimately, if people do know how things work, it's better than if they don't. Ignorance
True.
is not bliss. And I think part of the conversation is you don't want the technology to dictate to you. You want to use it as a tool. And as long as it's an instrument for improving your understanding and improving your actions, then it's beneficial. It's when everything in the world becomes a nail that you wind up with problems.
Charles, that's a super point. And again, goes back to what I was saying there to Marco in terms of the ideal participants in these kind of clusters and the capacity to learn from other areas, from whether, say, you mentioned at start manufacturing, but now also the banking sector. We all learned a lot through that. And you're right, understanding how markets work, how the system works, helps us all to make more informed decisions. If only I'd known what a tracker mortgage was. So Una, you get the last word and you're on mute. And the sun has suddenly come, wherever you're sitting, the sun has literally just lit up. So you've got a halo.
Okay, hi. Sorry about that. I was having a problem unmuting.
No, you're okay.
So first of all, I want to say thanks for letting me join this conversation. It's been very, very interesting. I suppose what I'd like to say is kind of an ending point is I think we're at a really exciting point with healthcare. And I think we're at a super exciting point of the intersection of technology with healthcare and what an impact it can have both on society, on patients, on clinicians to make healthcare more accessible, more affordable, better equity across healthcare. So, and I think if we take a look at any industry, I think healthcare is one of kind of the last industries really to take on these adoptions. So I think we're kind of at a critical point now where we're getting all of this influx in here. We're getting all of the tools. It's really a matter about how, healthcare companies and governments and everything learn how to adopt this and move quickly to adopt it well. Does that make sense? With trust and so forth. But I think we're at a really, really great point. I think it's going to be great for patients. I think it's great to scale services, to bring down costs. I think it's great for all concerned, but it's a matter about getting those policies, not only policies around security, privacy, and all the rest. Some of the biggest things we battle with is procurement. Nobody knows how to buy this stuff. Do you know what I mean? So all these things are in place around drugs, but they're not around digital health or these types of areas. So how do all these things come together properly to bring it out there and to really make a difference in patients' lives?
Make a difference in patients' lives. What a perfect few words to end on. You guys have all been absolutely fantastic. It has been such a pleasure and so interesting to be part of this conversation. So thank you all so much. And there is a final slide, but I'm going to read out what's on it. The next IVI webinar is on the 26th of May at 3 o'clock on digital construction. So it just shows you digital, no sector will be left untouched by digitalization. but you can always stay in touch via info@ivi.ie and follow the IVI on Twitter, IVI Insights, LinkedIn, and their ivi.ie website. Look, I have really enjoyed today. Thank you all so much. Thank you for inviting me along to be your moderator and have all the chats, and talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
We finished before. Is that okay?
Yes, great, Joan.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Not at all. My pleasure.
That was really good.
They were really interesting.
Yeah.
Also from my side.
Yeah.
Also from Marcus.
I could hear a voice.
Thanks so much.
It was really good. Yeah, and there was some really nice, interesting questions that came through as well. That's more questions than we've had normally.
Yeah, yeah.
Chat.
I was jotting them down in case we didn't get through them.
Yeah, and I think the correlation with banking was really interesting, just in that trust sphere, you know, about when it all goes horribly wrong. But people are still more, they weren't in deference to the banks. They generally just thought they were assholes, whereas we are genuinely in deference to our doctors and our medical professionals, and some of them are better than others. And so there is that little bit about people empowerment where it's good to know. And everybody will say, you know, you are your own best advocate. When you go into a hospital, you need to fight your case. My cousin had meningitis when she was 16, and she has lost both of her legs from the knees down and both of her hands. And she is now pregnant with her third child. She has gone on to get married and live a very lovely and successful life, and is on the couch presenting the Invictus Games to Prince Harry a few times. But I met a woman once who was in that hospital working there. She was a nurse in the hospital. And she asked me once, I said, are you related to Geronima Mulvihill? And I said, yeah, she's my cousin. He said, she is alive because of her mother. Not because of anything the doctors did. She is alive because of her mother, because her mother would not let them stop. And I just think that's where the people empowerment bit comes into. So anyway, I am going to go because my mother has just phoned me, speaking of mothers, and that's never a good sign. So I better go. Thank you so much for letting me be part of today, and I will talk to you soon.
Great, Joan. Thanks a million.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.